Chapter 1. The Blood Moon's Omen. The wind howled through the blackened pines, carrying with it the metallic scent of rain, and something else. Something older. Something alive. Selena Vera had learned to listen to the forest's whispers. It was the only reason she was still breathing. Tonight, though, the forest spoke in screams, leaves thrashing like they wanted to warn her away, roots clawing at her boots as she pushed through the overgrowth. She glanced up, and her breath caught. Above the jagged ridgeline, the moon had risen. Not silver, not pale, but deep crimson, swollen and pulsing like a living wound. The blood moon. The night when old bonds could be forged and broken. When wolves cast away reason and surrendered to instinct. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. If you ever see the moon bleed, child, run until the sky turns black again. But there was nowhere left to run. The pass was blocked by the last storm, and the shadows behind her belonged to more than just trees. A low growl rolled through the night. Not near. Not far. Everywhere. Selena's fingers tightened around the dagger at her hip, a pathetic weapon against what stalked her. Her breath came in shallow bursts, each one clouding the frigid air. Then she saw him. At first, he was just a shape, tall, broad-shouldered, motionless against the tree line. The crimson moonlight painted his hair in glints of silver and shadow. His eyes, even from this distance, caught the light in an unnatural way. She knew the stories. Every pack in the northern wilds did. The Wolf King. The monster in the mountains. The ruler who bent entire packs to his will, and slaughtered those who defied him. And now he stood between her and the last open path. His voice was a deep rumble, threaded with something dangerous. You've crossed into my land. Her pulse pounded in her ears. I'm just passing through. Lies. He stepped forward, and the movement was almost silent despite the frost-crusted ground. You smell of blood and fear. Tell me who hunts you. Selena took a step back. The wind shifted, carrying her scent to him. The growl in his chest deepened. You're not from any pack I know, he said, almost to himself. Then his gaze sharpened, and the air seemed to thicken around them. No, you're something else. She didn't know if he meant it as a threat or a revelation. Either way, her instincts screamed to run. But when he closed the space between them in a single stride, his hand catching her wrist before she could move, the fight in her faltered, not from fear, but from the strange electric heat that shot through her skin. His voice dropped to a low, possessive whisper. You stepped into my world, little trespasser. Now you don't leave it. The blood moon swelled above them, and deep in her chest, something ancient and unexplainable answered his claim. Chapter 2. The Alpha's Claim. His grip wasn't cruel, but it was unyielding, the kind of hold that told her she could fight, but she would lose. Selena's eyes darted to his. Up close, they were worse than the stories said. The Wolf King's irises weren't one color, but two, a molten gold rimmed in deep, predatory black, like the sun struggling to rise through midnight. Looking into them felt like leaning too far over the edge of a cliff. Let me go, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I could. He tilted his head, studying her like a hunter weighing whether the creature before him was worth killing. But you're mine now. The word mine seemed to settle into her skin, heavy and hot. She yanked her wrist back. He let her go this time, but his presence pressed in as surely as any chain. I don't belong to you, she said. One corner of his mouth curved, but it wasn't amusement, it was hunger. No. Then why does the moon tell me otherwise? She didn't answer. Didn't dare. The Wolf King began walking, not looking to see if she followed. The night is dangerous for prey. And you? His gaze flicked back to her, sharp as a blade. You reek of secrets. That makes you the most dangerous thing of all. She considered running. She'd be dead before she took 3 steps. So she walked after him, every muscle coiled. The forest changed as they moved. The air grew heavier, the trees thicker, the silence deeper, like the world itself was holding its breath. They emerged into a clearing where a structure loomed, a fortress of black stone, crowned with spires that clawed at the sky. Wolves moved in the shadows, their eyes gleaming like coals. None of them came closer. None of them dared. This is your den? She asked, voice low. This is my kingdom. He mounted the steps, then glanced back. "And tonight, you enter it as my captive." She almost laughed, not from humor, but from the absurdity of it. "Captive? You don't even know my name. I don't need your name to own your fate." He pushed the heavy doors open, and the heat of the firelit hall rolled out, wrapping around her. The scent of smoke and pine mingled with something more primal, the Wolf King's scent, pulling at her in ways she didn't want to understand. As she stepped inside, she realized something. This was no mere imprisonment. He wasn't keeping her here because she was a trespasser. He was keeping her because, for reasons she couldn't explain, the blood moon had chosen them both. And that meant escape might no longer be the danger she feared most. Chapter 3. The Betrayal Within. The great hall of the Wolf King's fortress was built to intimidate. Shadows stretched high along black stone walls, their surfaces etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the firelight. Antlers and ancient banners hung above, trophies from wars long past. Selena stood in the center, painfully aware of the way the wolves lining the walls watched her. Not as if she were prey was beneath their notice, but as if she were an anomaly. An intruder the moon itself had failed to warn them about. The Wolf King walked past them without a word, his long strides forcing her to hurry if she wanted to keep up. Every step he took was claimed by silence, the kind of silence that made the world lean in to listen. At the far end of the hall, an older man with graying hair and eyes like steel approached. His presence was smaller than the Wolf King's, but no less commanding. "My king," the man said, inclining his head. "You've returned earlier than expected, with company." "She's not company," the Wolf King replied. "She's mine." The man's eyes flicked to Selena, and something cold slid into her spine. There was no respect in his gaze, only calculation. "I see," he murmured. "Does she know what that means?" "She will," the Wolf King said. Selena crossed her arms. "I'm standing right here. You could explain instead of talking around me like I'm not in the room." The older man's lips twitched in faint amusement, but the Wolf King's expression didn't change. "Iron is my second," he said, as if that explained everything. "And my oldest ally." "Ally," Iron repeated, his voice soft but edged. "You've never brought a stranger here, Varric." Selena caught the name, Varric. The Wolf King had a name, one the rest of the world seemed too afraid to use. "She's not a stranger," Varric said. His tone made it sound like that fact was inevitable, not debatable. Iron's gaze lingered on her for a moment too long, then he bowed his head. "As you wish, my king. I'll make preparations." He left with a stiffness in his movements that spoke of disagreement left unsaid. Varric turned to her. "You'll have a room in the east wing. No one enters it without my command." "A cage with a view," she muttered. His eyes flashed gold. "You think yourself clever. But every wolf here knows your scent now. If you step outside my protection, they'll tear you apart before you take 3 steps beyond the gates." Her throat tightened, but she refused to show fear. "And you? Why should I trust your protection?" "Because whether you understand it yet or not," he said, stepping closer, "the moon bound your fate to mine. And I don't let go of what's mine." The air between them thickened, hot despite the cold stone walls. The way he looked at her, as if she were both puzzle and prize, made her heart pound for reasons she didn't want to admit. But in the shadows of the upper balconies, another set of eyes watched. That night, Selena found her room was twice the size of the small cottage she had once called home, with tall windows draped in heavy black velvet. A fire burned in the hearth, and though she hated to admit it, the heat seeped into her bones like a seduction. She wandered to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see the blood moon still hanging heavy over the fortress. Its light turned the snow beyond the walls to crimson. Somewhere in the corridors beyond her door, footsteps paused, then moved on. She turned away from the window and froze. A figure stood in the corner of her room, half in shadow. Before she could reach for her dagger, the man stepped forward, revealing sharp cheekbones, black hair falling to his jaw, and eyes the color of fresh spilled blood. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. Her hand tightened on the dagger hilt. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly. "A friend, if you want to survive." The flicker of doubt in her chest flared. "What are you talking about?" "Your Wolf King," the stranger said, his voice dipping lower. "He's not your salvation. He's your cage. And the moment he claims you under the blood moon, you'll never leave these walls alive." Selena's breath caught. She should have demanded answers. She should have shouted for Varric's guards. But something in the stranger's eyes, an urgency, a truth wrapped in danger, rooted her to the spot. "You should know," he continued, leaning closer. "There's someone here who wants you dead. And he's not the one you think." A sound echoed in the hallway, heavy, deliberate footsteps. The stranger slipped back into the shadows just as her door swung open. Varric stood in the doorway, his gaze sweeping over her in one sharp motion. "You're awake." She forced her voice steady. "Barely." "Good," he said. "Tomorrow you'll meet the pack. And you'll learn what it means to be claimed by a king." The door shut behind him, and she was alone again, but her heart still pounded, and her mind turned over the stranger's warning like a knife in the dark. Somewhere in this fortress, betrayal was already breathing down her neck. Chapter 4. Trial by Moonlight. Morning came slow in the Wolf King's fortress, as if sunlight itself feared to enter. The black stone corridors stayed dim, the air heavy with the musk of wolves and the faint tang of old iron. Selena was led from her chamber by 2 guards, both towering men with shoulders like walls and eyes as unreadable as their kings. They said nothing as they guided her through twisting halls until the muted rumble of voices grew louder. When the doors ahead swung open, the sound hit her in full. The great courtyard was alive with wolves, some in human form, others prowling on 4 legs, their fur bristling in the cold air. High banners snapped in the wind, each marked with the black crest of the king's pack, a wolf's head framed by a crescent moon. Varric stood at the center, bareheaded despite the frost, his dark hair falling loose around his face. His gaze found her instantly, as though he'd been waiting for her alone. The crowd's murmurs swelled when the guards led her forward. She could feel the weight of 100 stares, curiosity, suspicion, envy, and outright hatred swirling together in their eyes. Varric's voice carried like steel over stone. "This is Selena Vera," he said, and though the name wasn't hers, she didn't dare correct him. "She crossed my borders under the blood moon. The moon chose her. And so, she is mine." A ripple of reaction moved through the pack, low growls, murmurs of protest. One man broke from the front of the crowd, tall, broad, with scars like claw marks slashed down his left cheek. His voice was deep, but without the control Varric wielded. "King or not, you can't claim an outsider. Not without a trial." The tension in the courtyard tightened like a bowstring. Selena didn't miss the way the man's hand hovered near the axe strapped to his back. Varric didn't move, but his tone sharpened. "You challenge me, Corin?" Corin's jaw flexed. "I challenge her right to stand at your side." Gasps followed. A challenge by proxy, a trial in which Selena would have to prove her worth or be cast out, or killed. Varric's gaze slid to her, and though his expression didn't shift, she felt the unspoken question there. "Will you run from this?" She didn't know what madness gripped her, but she stepped forward before she could think. "Fine," she said. "If this is your law, I'll stand in your trial." The crowd stirred again, whispers now tinged with surprise. Varric's lips curved, just faintly, in something that might have been approval. "So be it," he said. Trial by moonlight. By nightfall, the courtyard had transformed. Torches lined the stone walls, their flames flickering against the darkness. In the center, a ring of cleared ground waited. The blood moon hung above, swollen and heavy, casting its red glow over the snow. Selena stood at the edge of the ring, her dagger at her hip, the only weapon she was allowed. Corin faced her from the opposite side, his axe gleaming. Varric stood outside the ring, watching, not interfering, not helping. But his eyes, they stayed locked on her, unblinking, as if every movement she made mattered to him. The first strike came fast. Corin swung the axe in a wide arc, the blade singing through the air. Selena ducked, the cold wind of its passing brushing her hair. She moved on instinct, years of surviving hunts in the wild guiding her steps. She darted in close, slashing at his arm. The dagger bit shallowly, but the sight of his own blood made Corin snarl. The crowd howled its approval, some for her, most for him. The fight became a blur of steel and shadow. Corin's strength was overwhelming, But she was quicker, weaving out of reach and striking where she could. Each time she looked toward Varric, she found his gaze steady on her, his jaw tight. When Corin feinted left and swung right, she misstepped. The axe grazed her side, the pain sharp and hot. She staggered, her breath hissing between her teeth. Corin grinned, too soon. She dropped low, sweeping his legs out from under him, and before he could rise, she pressed the dagger's point to his throat. The courtyard fell silent. "Yield," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Corin's jaw worked, but finally he said the word. "Yield." The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in growls of dissent. Varric stepped into the ring, his shadow falling over her. He took her wrist, raising it high for all to see. "She stands as mine," he said, his voice like thunder. "Any who defy this, defy me." The pack bowed their heads, some reluctantly, some with dangerous glints in their eyes. As Varric led her from the ring, his hand lingered against hers. "You've bought yourself a place here," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "But you've also painted a target on your back." And from the balcony above, hidden in the shadows, Selena saw the stranger from her room watching, a ghost of a smile on his lips, as if the game had only just begun. Chapter 5. The Shattered Bond ****. The trial had won Selena a place in the pack, but it had not won her peace. For 3 nights, the fortress felt like a labyrinth of watching eyes. Some of the wolves bowed their heads as she passed, but others tracked her with thinly veiled hostility. In the dining hall, voices dropped to whispers when she entered. In the training yard, she felt claws hidden beneath every polite word. Varric was always nearby, though never close enough to touch. He lingered at the edges of her vision, speaking to Iron in low tones or pacing the ramparts under the blood moon. She told herself she didn't care, that she didn't need his approval or his protection. But at night, when she lay awake listening to the distant howls, she couldn't shake the way his voice had sounded in the trial's aftermath, raw, unguarded for just a heartbeat. Still, there were bigger dangers than his silence. On the 4th night, the stranger came again. She was in her room, braiding her hair before the fire, when his reflection appeared in the dark glass of the window. She turned sharply, but he was already stepping into the light, moving like a shadow given shape. "You survived," he said, as if he doubted she could. "Barely," she replied. "You didn't come to help." "It wasn't my trial," he said simply. "But your next one will be." Her stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He took a step closer. "The King's second, Iron, has been meeting with outsiders. Rogues. They want you gone. Permanently. And they've found a way." Selena's hand tightened on her braid. "Why should I believe you?" "Because," the stranger said, "you already know you can't trust the ones closest to him. And because—" he hesitated, eyes flicking toward the door. "Because I'm not the enemy you think." Before she could ask more, footsteps approached. He melted into the shadows again, vanishing as if he'd never been there. The door swung open, and Varric stood framed in the firelight. His gaze went first to her, then to the empty corner of the room. "You're not alone," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," she admitted, her voice sharper than she intended. "But maybe that's because I can't get a straight answer from you about what's really going on here." His jaw tightened. "What's going on is that you're mine. And someone wants to take you from me." Something in his tone, that raw edge again, made her breath catch. "Then tell me who." His eyes darkened, a shadow passing through gold. "If I had proof, they'd be dead already." It happened the next night. Selena woke to a strange, sweet scent in her room. Her vision blurred, her limbs heavy. Poison, she realized, just before the door crashed open. 2 men in black leathers rushed in, their eyes wild with the glint of a coming kill. She staggered to her feet, dagger in hand, but her movements were sluggish. One of them slashed her arm, pain flared white-hot. Then Varric was there, a roar tearing from his throat as he collided with them. It was not a fight so much as a storm. In seconds, both men lay on the ground, breathing but broken. He caught her as her knees gave way, his arms like iron around her. "Stay with me," he growled, his voice shaking for the first time she'd heard. The world tilted, and for a moment she wasn't sure if it was from the poison or from the bond between them snapping taut like a stretched thread. She woke hours later in a different room. His room, the fire low, the scent of him thick in the air. He sat beside the bed, elbows on his knees, head bowed. When he looked up, the rage in his eyes was for someone else entirely. "They used moonbane," he said. "It can sever a bond before it's fully formed." Her chest tightened. "Then, if they'd succeeded," his voice was low, lethal, "you wouldn't even remember me." The thought hit harder than she expected. Varric reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against hers. It was the first time he'd touched her without claiming, without command. Just contact. Just need. "I'll find who did this," he said, his voice a vow. "And when I do, there will be nothing left of them to bury." From the shadows at the far wall, unseen by either of them, the stranger watched, his expression unreadable. Wrap it up in the last chapter. Chapter 6. The Eternal Night's End. The fortress didn't sleep after the attack. Guards patrolled in restless circuits, their boots ringing on stone. The air was sharp with tension, and with something else, a pressure that made the wolves' hackles rise. The blood moon was nearing its zenith. Selena stayed in Varric's room, under his watch, but her thoughts churned. She remembered the stranger's warning. "It's not the one you think." She'd assumed he meant someone beyond Varric's circle. But what if the real threat had been standing at the king's side all along? The answer came at dawn. Varric entered with iron trailing behind him. His second smile was thin, practiced. "I've doubled the guard," Varric said. "No one will touch you again." "That's wise," Iron added smoothly. "The rogues will try again before the moon sets." The words sounded helpful, but something in his tone snagged on Selena's instincts like a burr. She glanced at Varric. "And if the danger is already inside these walls?" Varric's brow furrowed. Iron laughed softly. "She means me. You hear that? Your little stray thinks I want her dead." Her fingers curled into fists. "I don't think. I know." Iron's eyes sharpened, not in surprise, but in confirmation. The room went still. "You used moonbane," she said. "And you sent those men to finish me. Because you know what I am to him." Varric's gaze cut to his second, slow and dangerous. "Tell me she's wrong, Iron." But Iron didn't deny it. Instead, his smile turned cold. "I warned you about letting an outsider in. She's not your salvation, Varric. She's your undoing. The bond will make you weak." In one swift movement, he drew a curved blade from his belt, silvered steel that gleamed in the firelight, and lunged. Varric met him head-on. The clash was brutal, a storm of strength against skill. Steel rang against steel, claws flashed, blood hit the floor. Selena backed toward the wall, looking for a weapon. Her dagger lay on the bedside table. She grabbed it, heart pounding. Iron drove Varric to his knees with a vicious kick, raising his blade for the killing blow. Selena didn't think, she moved. The dagger plunged into Iron's side, angled up beneath his ribs. His breath left in a harsh gasp. Varric rose in a blur, twisting the silver blade from his second's grip and driving it clean through his chest. Iron crumpled, the light in his eyes fading. For a long moment, only the sound of their breathing filled the room. Varric turned to her, his chest heaving. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first," she said quietly. His hand rose, cupping her face, his thumb brushing the cut on her cheek from the trial days ago. "The bond's not just a chain, Selena. It's a choice. And I choose you." Something unknotted inside her, a tension she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. "Then maybe," she said, "it's my choice too." That night, the blood moon reached its peak. The courtyard blazed with torchlight as the pack gathered. Varric stood before them, Selena at his side. "This is my mate," he said, his voice carrying into the night. "She has fought for her place among you. She has bled for it. And if any wish to challenge her now, step forward." No one moved. The air was heavy wit. Submission, grudging or not. Varric's hand found hers. "Then hear me, she is my equal, my queen. And any who threaten her will answer to me." The pack howled their answer, the sound rising into the crimson sky. Selena looked up at him, the firelight catching the gold in his eyes. She thought of the night she'd stumbled into his lands, desperate to escape the past. She thought of the bond, the trials, the blood they'd both spilled. And she realized that the danger had never been just about survival. It had been about finding someone who saw all her scars, and still chose to keep her. Varric bent his head, his voice just for her. "You'll never walk alone again." Under the eternal night of the blood moon, she believed him. Chapter 7. The Bond Sealed by Blood. The night had never been so silent. The fortress was still, as though the very stones waited for the outcome of what was about to happen. Outside, the blood moon hung swollen and red above the spires, bleeding its light into every shadow. Selena stood in the great hall, the firelight behind her making her silhouette long and sharp. The ceremonial dagger lay on the obsidian table between her and the Wolf King. It gleamed as though eager to taste skin. "You called me here," she said, her voice steady even as her heartbeat roared in her ears. "I did," he replied, his tone as calm as if they were discussing the weather. "The bond between us can no longer be denied. The moon demands it. I demand it." Her throat tightened. "You think I'll just give myself to you because of some ancient superstition?" He stepped forward, the golden black of his eyes igniting in the dim light. "It's not superstition, Selena. You feel it. Every time I'm near, every time my hand grazes yours, every time you breathe me in, you know you're mine." She hated how true it was. Every fiber of her being screamed to deny him, yet every instinct whispered to surrender. "I don't want to lose myself to you," she said. "You won't lose yourself," he said softly, closing the distance between them. "You'll find the part of you that's been missing your whole life." The heat between them was unbearable. Her wolf stirred inside her, restless, recognizing him as something inevitable. With a single motion, he picked up the dagger and offered it, hilt first. "Your choice. Mark me, and we seal our bond under the blood moon. Refuse, and I'll let you walk away tonight. But you won't survive what's waiting beyond my walls." Her fingers hovered over the dagger. If she marked him, she bound herself to him forever, his mate, his queen, his equal in a kingdom built on shadows. She thought of her past, of the life she had before, of the loneliness she carried like a stone in her chest. She thought of his eyes, his voice, his unrelenting presence, and the strange, intoxicating safety she felt when he stood between her and the world. Slowly, she took the dagger. His gaze never wavered as she pressed the blade to his palm, slicing just enough to let the blood well. He took the dagger from her, mirrored her action, and then their blood-streaked hands came together. The air in the hall shifted, heavy, electric, ancient. The blood moon's glow seemed to pour through the windows, drenching them in crimson light. Power surged through her veins, sharp and sweet, as if her very soul was locking into place. "You're mine now," he murmured. "No," she whispered, though a faint smile ghosted her lips. "We're each other's." And then his mouth was on hers, the kiss fierce, sealing their vow in fire and breath. The power between them roared, and somewhere in the depths of the fortress, the wolves howled in answer. When they finally parted, the Wolf King rested his forehead against hers. "Welcome home, my queen." And for the first time in her life, Selena believed she was exactly where she was meant to be.